All right, welcome to the April session of the Passaic County NJTESOL-NJBE Passaic County chapter. We're here with Andrea Bitner, and she's presenting with us again for the second time. We're very excited to have her here. She's presenting on her new book, her second book. She was with us in the fall, so if you missed her first session with us, you can always find the Passaic County chapter on YouTube, and you can see her previous session. So we're happy to have you here again with us.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's great to see you. Is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, can everybody see that all right? Perfect. So great to be with you again this spring. I can't believe we are already in spring as this school year winds down for so many of us. But my name is Andrea Bitner. I am a proud English language learner, educator, author, and speaker based out of right outside of where you are, really, many of you, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I'm glad to be here with you tonight to talk to you about our most at-risk students in connection to my second true story, which just released this year, called When Niagara Falls. I want to start to talk to you tonight about our true story and of a young girl who I currently still get the opportunity to work with named Niagara. And we got Niagara into our school building in second grade. And she came into our building with many siblings. And I can still remember sitting there watching her in second grade in the hallway of our elementary building having breakfast every day. And one of the things I noticed about her immediately was that she didn't seem to come to school with much food, or she always came to school really hungry. And so every morning, our teachers would make that allotment to let her sit out at this little desk outside of the classroom and begin to eat her breakfast. Even though we noticed that immediate need, I still had a lot of hope for her future. One of the other things we noticed pretty immediately within her first and second year with us was that she typically arrived late to school. And so we all know that arriving late for students socially, emotionally, academically can cause a lot of challenges for them. And it really became routine lateness, routine tardiness throughout that school year. I really recall as we started to get to know the family one particular day when I was sitting outside for a meeting. And I was anticipating that mom was going to do that late drop off. And I really wanted to get to speak with her because we had reached out via phone and we weren't getting much response. And I ran out to the parking lot. I got there and I saw the car come and I quickly saw her jump out of the car and the car exited that parking lot. And I remember having this feeling of defeat that really just washed over me because it was a moment that encapsulated the struggles of reaching out to families like hers who were really overwhelmed by their own challenges. And what I learned at that moment is that it was going to be a long-term journey for me to get to support Niagara and her family and really start to increase the support and systems around them. As she went into grades 5 through 7, I really start to see broader challenges start to happen. Her concentration decreased. She was suffering academically in class because of lack of foundational skills. There was instability in her living situations. There was instability in who was caring for her at home. There was instability in the amount of homework she was able to get done. And it was like her brain was constantly in survival mode. In addition to that, she started to display in grades 5 through 7 what I would call a non-committal attitude. She had challenges making friends. She didn't trust many of her teachers. And I started to really see that shift of where she was younger, she would share any and all information that related to life at home and life at school. But in grades 5, 6, and 7, she really started to pull back from sharing information with her teachers. And I also started to see a decline in some resilience. So she started to believe less in herself. She started to question the supports in the building, and she started to really struggle with how to navigate different expectations. But really, the life that was outside of her was becoming her normal as she went through grades 5 through 7. It wasn't, I don't think, always the best support for her, but it was the only normal that she ever really knew. At the same time as that was all happening, we as a school really tried to support her, right? So what I would say is that all her labels started to increase. She was in Title I support for reading. She was in Title I support for math. She became truant and started to go through the truancy court system. So she became very used to court appointments. The conversation was going back and forth in our educational teams. Should we consider her for special education? She definitely qualified for free and reduced lunch each year. She was an English language learner, and we placed her in many guidance counselor groups. All of these things continue to increase for her, all of these labels, while all of those moving parts below continue to go on as well. So she became one of our most vulnerable students. She needed lots of advocacy. We were trying to foster belonging. We were trying to accommodate for all of these academic, social, and emotional needs. And she really became one of the most supported students. We also really were trying to take into consideration collaboration and creating a bridge between the home and school for her to have even more success. There was a massive communication gap between home and school for many years. So I would try anything and everything to contact parents as often as possible with good news or challenging news or anything in between. So we would try phone calls. Sometimes we would just FaceTime dad or FaceTime mom or FaceTime grandma midday. We would send text messages. We would continue to send parent invites for meetings, and those parking lot visits became infamous because I could often be found waiting outside at the end of the day or waiting in the morning at the beginning of the day, trying to access family when I knew someone would be dropping her off. As we continued to go through that time of grades 5 through 7, what I like to say is I watched her begin to do time for crimes that she never committed. And so in order to react to all of the things that were going on in her life, she started to resort to other avenues to support them. She was couch surfing, going into different people's houses and staying at different homes when she needed to. Detentions increased exponentially for trouble in class. She was again mentioned in truancy court. Suspensions started to enter her life where she was being suspended outside of school for lateness, for truancy, for disrespect to teachers. She also increased responsibility in sibling care. She was now responsible for the younger siblings that came to school with her and getting them to school every day. I watched her suffer from many mixed emotions at that time. And at that time, she also suffered from parental incarceration. So her family dynamics were changing. This is a picture of her in the book that I wanted to show you from one of the pages. And I want to mention here that with all of these moving parts happening, I had to take a step back and resort on some of the learning that I have had with Ruby Payne. If you're not familiar with Ruby Payne's work, understanding a framework for poverty and the thinking patterns that go on, I highly suggest you check it out. But you'll notice here that in students who come from a poverty-based household, these are the areas they often know how to navigate the best. So things like debt, friends and family, jobs, chemical dependency, court systems, entertainment, housing, criminal justice. Surprisingly to me, when I learned this thinking pattern, these students that come from this type of house may be able to navigate these systems best, right? But if you look at the difference for a student who may not come from a poverty-based household socially, emotionally, academically, when I say poverty, I'm saying in all those three areas, now you're thinking, in these students coming from this quote unquote middle class background, look at the difference of the things that they could know how to confidently navigate. Hobbies, transportation, health, mental health, retirement, education, childcare, their activities, right? These are their normal. These are the things and systems they know how to navigate. And in the top 1%, financially speaking, socially speaking, emotionally speaking, of households in the world, people who have a net worth of 7.8 million or more, these are the systems they can navigate comfortably. Being on a board of directors, knowing how to work with lawyers, accountants, charitable activities, traveling, cashing for memberships, vacations. So I point that out because uncertainty for Niagara, as I say in this last line, was the only warm blanket that she had ever learned to rely on. She only knew how to navigate those first systems that I mentioned. When I started to introduce new systems to her, they still created systems of uncertainty within her. But at that time, I really couldn't expect her to jump into that frame of thinking and expect her to abandon what she had learned from family. I can never expect her to stop loving her parents or having great relationships with them or trying to strive to learn from them, because I say that expecting a child to stop loving a broken parent is like asking them to stop needing gravity. No matter how unstable that ground is, it's still what holds their world in place. And as teachers, we don't replace that force, but we become the steady floor beneath their feet when their home life feels like it's shifting. Niagara, through all of these things that were happening to her, had one thing, and that was potential. And I talk about on this page where I say Miss Respite, who is myself in the book, curious eyes darted to the back of the classroom. Okay, she replied. Her eyes beamed, but her heart sank. She had worked with Niagara's family for over 10 years and slowly watched the remnants of every family storm weather and wither each child's hope away. Surrender quit school in grade 11. Forsake graduated and went to jail. Wave was suspended monthly. Demand needed glasses. Libel was struggling with reading. Burden rarely came to school. Onus was TBD, but not Niagara. And it was that potential within her that caused me to really pause and remember that most of what she had learned in life was caught, not taught. And I had an opportunity here to start to teach her, along with the other teammates in my building, how to reframe her thinking and navigate new systems. Now, that wasn't an easy task to do, because in the book, I describe Niagara as having that feeling that she will never want to melt. She will never want to show her educators exactly how much suffering she's been going through. And so what I say at the bottom line is that when teachers like Miss Respite projected too much sunshine, too much help, too many resources, too many opinions, too many ways to try and navigate systems at once, Niagara felt that melt, that appreciation, but melting water was not permitted to take up room in her survivorship bucket because her mind was trained to always be in a sense of survivor mood. Through all of these supports, teams of educators, active listening, understanding experiences, responsive actions, right? Empathetic supporters. We had all these things in place, but it took her 6 years to finally share with us the ideas and the challenges and the needs that she had that were stopping her from being successful at home. It took us 6 years to finally get her to ask for help from the teachers in the building and outside community resources. When she finally shared with the school what she needed and the things that were happening in her home, it created some major life transition. We watched her go through her 8th grade year, and one of my most exciting moments, and I talk about this in the book as well, was on her 8th grade graduation day. And I was sitting in the bleachers and I was so excited to see her graduate. And her parents were able to make it, which was awesome. They were in the stands. And I respectfully sat down and watched her graduate through her 8th grade ceremony. And at the end of the ceremony, I was standing off to the side and she comes running over and she's like, Miss B, get over here. Get over here. We need to take pictures. And I said, okay, so I went over to take pictures and she hands me a picture of right here, this gift card. And I looked at it and I said, oh, Niagara. I said, this isn't for me. This is for you. Miss Jackson gave it to you. And she said, I know, Miss B, but I want you to have it. And so I sat back and I said, I'll tell you what, we're going to make a deal. I said, I'm going to keep this gift card taped up into my office desk, which I still have it here today. And I said, and on the day you graduate from high school, you and I are going to go out for a cup of coffee. And she was thrilled. And she knows, as she's in high school now, that I still have this taped up onto my desk. And it is waiting for her to graduate from high school so that we can grab that cup of coffee. And I'm even happier and excited to report that she thinks she wants to be a teacher. And so I told her, I said, hey, I am ready to retire. Come on down anytime and you can sit in this chair. And so this true story really highlights, and I'll talk about it again in a few minutes, the journey that many of our students take, the many layers that exist beneath them that teachers are always trying their best to see, and what happens when I quote unquote break the ice or melt the ice and really help students learn how to ask for help. I'm sure that you have a student just like Niagara. I'm sure you have a Niagara in one of your classes. So I want to share with you just some real practical strategies that I found in 26 years of education and working with the most at-risk kids in the building that seem to support them best. The first thing is consistency. Whatever we say we're going to do, we have to do it. Whether it's positive or consequential, it's very important to Niagara and students just like her that consistency is there. So, for example, I still have lunch with Niagara every Friday. I travel up to the high school, we sit down, we catch up, we check in about her week. Every week, I actually got an email today on Wednesday or Thursday. I get an email. Hey, are we having lunch this week? That consistency for her, keeping a pulse on how things are going, is very important. Focusing on the controllables at school. We have students like Niagara in our building for 7 to 8 hours a day. We always focused on what we could control for them at that time. We could never control the outside influences. We could never control the outside family dynamics, the things that are changing in their life. But we can control letting them feel seen, letting them feel heard, letting them feel valued, and providing the academic supports and direct instruction they need in that controlled environment of our school. That's what we continue to focus them on. Finding out what motivates students. I know that for students like Niagara, she's motivated and wants to become a teacher. She would be the first college graduate in her family. I know that she's motivated by TikTok and social media and lots of fun things, right? Every week when I go for lunch, it's, can you get me a Chick-fil-A sandwich? Could you bring McDonald's? How about Dunkin' Donuts? This student in particular loves treats from outside of school. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and buy something for your students every week, but is it sports? I have another student who's a tough kid in the building. He belonged on the basketball team. I made sure he connected with the coach in his freshman year. He actually made the team. Being on the team motivated him to keep his grades up for the season. It gave him that sense of belonging. It gave him the motivation, and he's already in practice for next year. That was what was motivating for him. So figuring out what those tough kids need in terms of motivation is going to be differentiated depending on the kid. Let them touch their dreams. If they say they want to be a teacher, if they say they want to work in construction, if they say they want to work as a lawyer, find one in the community. Let them go touch that dream for a day. Let them go shadow that person. Let that person come into the building and talk to them. Maybe you can Zoom with them for a few minutes. Let them touch the dream, have access to what's waiting for them and what their interests are in the future so they can see it. If they can see it, I always say they can be it. Let them start to see it. That will help motivate them on the hard days when they don't feel like doing well in the classrooms. Representation matters. Along with that theme of see it, be it. If you can find other people in the community or alumni who are just ahead of them, who have had similar experiences like Niagara, connect them with those people. Ed Milet always says, if you want to know the road ahead, ask the people coming back. And kids will listen to other kids who are just ahead of them, in my experience, much more easily than they will listen to me trying to tell them the same thing every single day. And so look for opportunities to connect kids to young adults, kids to adults who have had similar experiences to them, so they can hear that advice and guidance about what their mistakes were, what their wins were along the way. Love their family as much as they do. I touched on that earlier, but sometimes it was really challenging to think of family dynamics that were happening for Niagara or to hear decisions that were being made about why she was truant for 45 days that year. And you think to yourself, wow, like, I wish, their normal was my normal. I wish I could get her to school more often. I wish the incarceration didn't happen. I wish that, there wasn't as much neglect going on in the home, whatever it may be. But when those kids come to school, they don't unlove their parents. And when they see that you value and accept and admire their family as much as they do, you'll have a better chance at accessing family communication and connection. And finally, use all school supports. As soon as we came in, even as a young student, and saw that she lacked foundational skills, it had to be a we before me approach. It had to be a find the reading specialist, find the math specialist, find the guidance counselor, or get to the social worker, all hands on deck for a student who we knew would need many hands and many resources, and keep those supports consistent for as long as you can. One of the most important things we've had to teach Niagara over time is from a friend of mine, Principal L, and I thought he says it best. And he says, in order for kids to be successful, instead of teaching them to be successful, teach them how to respond when they're not successful. Because it's in those moments when the plan didn't work, or when the failure happened, or the detention happened, or the suspension happened. My friend Carlos Ojeda says he was in every engine there ever was: detention, retention, suspension, right? Intervention. All these engines are happening for these kids. Teach them how to respond when they're not successful at first for long-term success. Carlos Ojeda and he came to our building to speak to our students. If you haven't checked out Cool Speak, phenomenal organization doing youth engagement for kids. We brought some of our toughest kids, including Niagara, to that presentation. They were locked in within 30 seconds of him speaking to them. And at the end, they were asking for autographs and for him to FaceTime their families. And so he is a phenomenal speaker along with his team. And he taught our kids real quick, you don't fight back, you fight forward. You look forward, because you can't control the things that have, the decisions that have been made for you outside of your ability in your life. But what you can do is fight forward to make sure you're successful with the people who are seeing you, valuing you, and hearing you, and want you to do well. And so I highly suggest him as a well person to come to your school with that message. So when Niagara Falls has many components to it. One of the first components that it has is the true story. The second component that it has is poetry. And I'll show you two of the poems in just a few minutes. They're poems based on the perspective of Niagara and based on the perspective of the teachers. Because along the way, and I've worked, like I said, in this field now for 26 years as a support teacher, I get to see teachers in every grade level all day long doing their best for kids. And I get to see some of our most at-risk kids in the building in every grade level all day long, really challenging their teachers. And I wanted to find an opportunity through their eyes to offer both perspectives. That's what the poetry in this book aims to do. I also, though, thought it was really important to write 3 teacher letters to thank teachers at the elementary level and at the middle school level and the secondary level at the high school level. A thank you. Again, in their shoes, in that first person mentality, talking about the challenges and the wins that they go through in their educational careers. So you'll see that third section, Melting the Ice, a tribute to teacher, as a thank you teacher to each level along the way. One of the poems that has been well received so far throughout of people who have read the book is called Being Tough is Not Enough. And I thought it would be okay for me to read that to you today. And so this poem is in the book. It's called Being Tough is Not Enough, and it's from the perspective of Miss Respite. Being tough is not enough. I've witnessed eyes of steels and eyes cast on the floor. I've seen fists in the air, sudden bolts and slammed doors. I've listened to stories of why work is incomplete. I've watched kids quit, well, anything, after one small defeat. Who is that kid? Many people will ask. He thinks he's so tough, he should get back to class. Have you ever let other people's words seize you as you walk by? Your armor is heavy. It refuses to let you cry. Your toughness shields you from explaining, which you see as a chore. And I get it. It's easy to walk by each day and declare he needs more. More attention, more care, more supplies, less stares. More time, more skills, more patience, less drills. More money, less hurry, more fun, less worry. More opportunity, more open doors, more compassion, less roars. Well, I'm here to tell you that being tough is not enough. It's not the secret to success. And then the poem goes on from there. And so I'm going to end the poem here. Being tough is not enough. It's not the answer to life stuff. Trust me, I know I've been where you're at. I fought battles with the best and lost every match. So how do you let go of the armor, you ask? Asking for help is the first step, and it's no easy task. You surround yourself with people who are better than you. Join their path and follow what they do. And don't forget this message, no matter how hard to hear. Telling people your truths will release that ugly monster called fear. Let go of tough armor every once in a while, and I promise it will lessen your load, keep you focused on the road, and even make you smile. With love, Miss Respite. And so that was one of the first poems that is in the middle of the book. And the purpose there is to encourage students to let go of that armor, to ask for support as they go through that tough stuff. But acting tough is not enough. The second poem that I wanted to share with you is called The Door to More. And it reads, the door to more waits locked and jammed when you aren't using the keys for your life's plan. Staring at its size won't make it move. Yet there it sits asking, do you have what it takes to prove that you are more than capable, more than just words, more than your situation, more than a frightened bird, more than your label, more than friends, more than one bad decision, more than what you pretend. Doors don't appear every single day, and they won't open unless you find a way to access people, places, and things that will support you in pushing through the weight of the heaviest things, like discipline, doubt, anxiety, and fear, like procrastination, opinions, failure, and tears. Just knock on that door. The world is waiting for you. I knocked years ago. You can too. As I went through these conversations and started to show this book to middle school and high school students across the country, these are some of the messages they wanted teachers to hear. They want you to know that my behavior is a signal, but it's not the whole story. They want you to know that my life outside of school affects everything that I do inside of school. They want you to know that they need to feel safe before they can learn. They want school to matter to their lives. And they want you to know that they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. And they ask that you not give up on them, even when they look like they have given up. It's really difficult for them to have a mind shift, but I call this a misfit mind shift from game on to I can be successful. And what I've watched Niagara and other students go through is this kind of flowchart that I've created in terms of mindset. So it's usually a few years of I'm not enough, I don't belong, nobody believes in me. And as we continue to pound the positive message and all those supports into their school plan, then they start to admit, well, it's not that, it's just I don't know how. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to do that math. I don't know how to navigate that system. And when they started to accept those supports, that mind shift starts to change again to become, well, I just didn't learn it yet, but I'm on my way. And after a few more years, and sometimes this can take months, sometimes it can take years, it's, oh, well, I'm willing to try and dip my toe in something new. I'm willing to make a friend outside of the usual social influencers I have. I'm willing to try that club. I'm willing to take that honors class. I'm willing to get a job. Starting to change the wheel of thinking to let me just dip my toe in it. Once they start to do that, they've got one foot in and then two. And once you start to see that 2 feet are on the ground and that mindset change of thinking, now it's like, hey, I feel the start of something new. And really, that's what the trajectory has been for our student Niagara. So this message comes to all of you from myself and Niagara, who is currently in our high school and will be graduating. And I'm waiting for that cup of coffee in the year 2030. So thank you so much for coming. I always say belonging begins with stories, true stories, and these are ours. And Take Me Home and When Niagara Falls both are here for you to support your students in that thinking. And I'll put it at the end, a QR code with additional resources for you. If you're looking for a free weekly newsletter to continue with tips, tricks, resources, and inspiration, I have one that you can join for free. I drop it every Thursday. There's access to Take Me Home and When Niagara Falls. I've also got a leadership article that was just published in PASCD, now called PA Edge, about the Stingray approach, rethinking power, presence, and leadership. An article about shared responsibility between EL teachers and students and content teachers in the building, and a great podcast, if you're not familiar with it, from two friends of mine, Mary Sandoval and Catherine Nelson, that just released this year called Literacy Across Languages. And so these are some resources. I have that QR code there for you. If you would like to use your phone and grab it, it will take you to live links of everything. And you can find me anytime at AndreaBitnerBooks.com. So I'd love to just let Yaset and Mary open it up for questions, discussion. I'd love to know your thoughts on everything that I shared this evening.
Thank you, Andrea. That was wonderful, amazing. A lot of things that really touch me. I work with the high school, and I see a lot of this. I see students coming in with this heavy baggage, consequences of choices that their parents made for them, and they're kind of like being dragged along, trying to swim against the current. So I love the part where you said they're not like acting up for you, or they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So as an educator, to understand that, you know, they're not, there's some things that are beyond their control, that they can't control that. Like you said, they have to realize that they need to ask for help, that acting tough is not enough. So everything that you said, that you mentioned, I can relate to in the high school setting. And I don't know if Mary, if you want to jump in and add, from the bilingual students that you see, um, in your population, in your school. And Maria, feel free to jump in. And Kelsey, thank you for joining us. Everyone can just, engage in discussion.
Yeah, so this was beautiful. What really resonated with me, was the like that wheel that you put the model for poverty. Um, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know like there was a name to it, and it just, puts a lot of things into perspective because our multilingual learners, as they are learning language, they're also going through these trials at home, right? That can change the trajectory of how they learn, the language as well. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I felt lucky to come upon Ruby Payne's work early on in my career. And I have that book bookmarked with notes everywhere. And I also thought it was interesting how, on the reverse side of that, as a person who might come from what they call that middle class mindset of poverty or middle class mindset, right? I wouldn't know how to navigate some of the other systems, right? Where I might not know how to navigate a court system or an absenteeism system or X or Y or Z, right? So when looking at those wheels, not only looking at it from, oh, these are the things my students are comfortable navigating, but oh, these are the things myself and other students wouldn't be comfortable navigating no matter what wheel you look at.
Andrea, can you also talk about Cool Speaks and Carlos Ojeda Jr.? If someone dropped it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carlos Ojeda Jr. is a friend and colleague of mine. He's based out of Reading, Pennsylvania. He started an organization called Cool Speak at least a decade ago, where they do all youth engagement. So I've not only gotten the opportunity at least 3 or 4 times now to see him and his team in action in different settings. I've seen him as a speaker come to our building, like I said, and speak to our middle and high school students. We also had the opportunity to go to what's called the Delaware Valley Equity and Consortium event they have once a year, where 27 districts get together. And we bring the toughest kids. We're bringing in the kids that need people to know that they believe in them, and that we bring them to this conference to hear from speakers, to attend workshops of their choosing for a half or a full school day. And then they come back together and they do this incredible poetry slam where kids from all over have brought poems they have written or worked on that day, and they get up on stage and they bare their hearts and souls. And he and his team work so eloquently with these kids from 27 districts that they're snapping for each other and clapping for each other, and they really have a pulse on the needs of today's youth, the topics of today's youth, and how to reach them. And so I will be a proponent of his work and his team's work any day of the week. I've gotten to do sessions for them myself when I can, and I'm not in school, but they travel the United States working with teams and working with kids. So if you have not checked it out, it's coolspeak.com, and tell him that Andrea Bitner sent you. He's a friend of mine, and I'm sure they'd be happy to give you more information.
That's amazing.
Andrea, do you do like Zoom presentations for schools? Or I know you teach during the day, but
Yes. So I feel very lucky because I still get to teach every day, like all of you. And usually during the school year, once or twice a month, I travel in person, or especially on the East Coast during the school year because I can in and out in a day. So I've traveled in person or virtually. You can check out the website, which is AndreaBitnerBooks.com. And I've got some of my most requested sessions. My goal with my professional development now, and I've been doing it for 5 years, is to help teachers gain confidence in collaboration, communication, content accommodation, and connection with EL students and families. So one of the most requested sessions that I do is called 10 Questions You Should Ask When an English Learner Joins Your Class. And that goes through at any grade level, the 10 common questions you should be asking with the solutions to go with it. And so that's one I've been doing now for 5 years. In addition to that, I've done some sessions on content accommodation. And I've done some sessions with EL teachers, learning how to collaborate with content area teachers. I'm getting ready to do that again in May. So, yes, I love getting to do PD for teachers around the nation. And I feel lucky that I get to do both. I do once or twice a month during the school year, and then I do more of them in the summer, and I'll do them virtually or in person.
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
You want to talk to us about your newsletter? Does that come every week? Every
It
Thursday?
does.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So the newsletter is called What's Your Plan? Be proud, be loud, be ambitious, and never give up. I write it every week myself, and it drops to inboxes every Thursday morning. And it covers all kinds of topics. It's got tips, tricks, inspiration, and resources. That's my goal to put into every newsletter. Right now, it has about 3,000 readers across the country, which is pretty cool. Mostly EL teachers and leaders. And so it's been steadily growing as I started it a few years ago. And I'm really proud of it. I get emails from teachers all the time that they felt inspired or thanks to the resources. But I think it's great to still be in the classroom because we live it every day and then get to relay those resources, tips, and tricks for teachers. So if you grab this QR code, you should be able to access that link. It's one of the live links.
Yeah, Kelsey, the QR code is right there on the screen right now. And there, I think it opens up to something like this, and then the newsletter is right in the middle.
Yes.
You can just click the purple hyperlink.
And feel free to share that link if you have EL teams that you think other teachers would benefit, or leaders in your building that you would like to, or directors of EL services. Please feel free to share that link out with people so that you can access more support.
I'm just dropping the PD information here. Feel free to keep asking questions. Topic.
Sure.
I also put the link to your website on the chat. If anyone is interested, they can just click on it.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. So Kelsey, the PD link is there. You can fill out the survey and get a certificate for today's PD. Awesome. Do you have any interest in doing your own podcasts, Andrea? I know you mentioned you gave us a resource for the two other teachers that you know, but is that something maybe that you would be interested?
I've done a few times within my newsletter. I call it Teacher Feature, where I have interviewed different EL teachers around the country and then Zoom recorded it and then just pushed it out for teachers to support.
Okay.
It's something that I love to do. I don't always have the bandwidth for it as much as I wish I could right now, but it is something in the future to consider for sure. But I do enjoy other people's podcasts. If you're not familiar with the Teach Better team, teachbetter.com, they have an entire network of educational podcasts. And there are at least a dozen on there on all different topics that you can listen into for free anytime. And if you haven't, like I said, checked out Literacy Across Languages, that's an excellent podcast to check out. The ML Chat podcast, I've been a guest on that before. That's another excellent podcast to check out. Carol Salva, Boosting Achievement. has a wonderful podcast. So there are many podcasts out there that are growing. And I would consider, just even if you just Google, podcasts for English language learner teachers, lists will come right up for you.
That's awesome.
If you're interested in taking any classes as well, I didn't mention this earlier, but I've been teaching classes for Del Tech in Wilmington, Delaware. They have both online, hybrid, asynchronous, and synchronous models. One class is called Teaching Literacy for English Learners. So I'm teaching that. And I'm also teaching inclusive classrooms and classroom management. So if you know anyone who's becoming a teacher, if you have any paras who are taking classes, if you're adding classes, to your level of expertise yourself, they would be 2 classes I've taught all this year for Del Tech, and I'll continue to teach again next year.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, for sure. If anyone out there is looking to add to
Your contact information handy. You're a woman, a professional of many, many hats, many trades,
I
many.
appreciate that. Yeah, I feel lucky that I get to, I get to do this work, and I find that EL teachers are, the best teachers in the world. I love being around them, and I hope that we cross paths again sometime this year with upcoming conferences and things going on.
Yes, yes. Any more last minute questions? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording for everyone.
Okay.